Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. I'd like to call our school committee meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Let's begin by just doing a roll call of school committee members. So this is Brett Argel, school committee chair.
Lisa Brown.
Ellie Grady.
Julie Mulder.
Becky, did I hear from you?
Yeah, Becky Charniak.
Thank you. And could I also get a roll call of our school administration staff that are here as well?
Kevin Maines.
Courtney
Mono.
Cindy Sosha.
Neil
John
Urquhart.
Bell. John Bell.
Jesse Vega.
Donna Souza.
And Mr. Delaney, you just joined us here. We were just asking for a roll call, so I'll roll call you in. Mr. Delaney is also joined us. I think we got everybody. Okay. So we do not have our student representatives with us at this point. Public comment and communication. The school committee welcomes public comment on items that are within the scope of the school committee's responsibilities, but not on the agenda this evening. Is anyone here for public comment?
Don't know.
Excuse me? Okay, seeing none. Any old business? Any new business? Okay, we will move on to the superintendent's report. First on the agenda, we were going to originally have Senator Fattman and Representative McKenna in. Mr. Maines let me know earlier today that, oh, excuse me, that he had spoken with Senator Fattman and that they decided that it was probably premature to have them come and speak with us at this point, with so much still up in the air on the state level. So we decided we're going to push that off a little bit later. Mr. Maines, had you also spoken to Mr. McKenna's office? Because I
Not.
Okay.
Senator Fattman indicated that he was going to reach out to Mr. McKenna and let him know that we were off and that I was going to get back to Mr. Fattman. The committee is interested in doing a follow-up meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you. It was on my to-do list today to make sure I reached out to Representative McKenna, and it got dropped. So I'm glad that Mr. Fattman was going to do that. So, okay, with that, I'm just going to put up our. Actually, I don't think we're going to do that. It's our superintendent's report.
Right, and so I did want to mention that Senator Fattman did indicate that he was hoping to have information relative to the state's decision on the MCAS testing. He also hoped to have an update on any impacts to the Student Opportunity Act that was approved. We also hope to have some information on the part that the federal stimulus will play, hopefully for the community and the schools. And I did indicate that this is our second meeting in April, and I did not know the committee wanted to consider a third meeting. He thought that within a week or two, he would be more than prepared to come back with information on all of those. And so that would be either the 22nd, which would be the vacation week, or the 29th. And our first meeting in May is May the 6th.
Yeah, I'm willing to entertain any and all of those as options. Maybe could we maybe just bookmark the 22nd for now and see how things go? Anyone in disagreement with that? And I know we're going to discuss April vacation, but I'm assuming no one's flying off to Bora Bora for April vacation. Okay, so let's plan on that for now, and let's address that further as we go.
So I will reach out to Representative Fattman tomorrow and inquire as to whether the 22nd would work for him. I would assume it would be a 7 o'clock start, and it would be virtual, obviously, and just run it by him.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. The next thing on the docket is an update on the superintendent's position, and I think, Brett, I'm going to throw that back to you.
Yes. So going back, and I should have pulled up the minutes, but we had gone into discussions with Mr. Maines about the superintendent position back in the winter. And we had come to a verbal agreement on keeping him around into FY21 under a modified contract, which would have a reduced schedule and as well as reduced pay. Our committee spent, hours discussing this and deliberating this, and we felt it was the right thing to do to try to keep Mr. Maines around one more year. He had been contemplating retirement, and we felt we all came to agreement that we thought this was a good way for him to start easing into retirement, but for us to maintain his leadership for one more year and to really help kind of complete his plan to move the district forward that we've been working on for several years. We hadn't, come to a full agreement on, well, actually, we'd come to an agreement on a contract, but we hadn't yet signed the contract. And then COVID-19 hit us. And that really throws a huge wrench into those plans. Our district is going to be dealing with quite a bit, I would guess, over the next 12 months. And the idea of having a superintendent that's only with us part-time or on a reduced schedule, I think is scary for all of us. So I think, Mr. Maines agrees with that. We originally been working with Ms. Urquhart to cover for him while he was out of the office under this arrangement. I think she also agrees that was not going to be a tenable option, given what we would expect to be dealing with over the summer and trying to catch up and trying to get ourselves together for a school year next year. With that, we are moving away from that arrangement and shelving that, and we need to begin a superintendent search at this point. So, Mr. Maines, do you want to add anything to that, or anyone else from the committee?
And again, you portray it very well, Brett. It was a pretty good plan. There were a couple of variables that were not falling into place, and as a result, then the contract was submitted by Greg right before, I want to say the week before this whole coronavirus started to unravel, and that just became everything to everything that we were doing. But we had talked, and I had hoped that I would be able to, in reduced capacity, continue to provide leadership. I think all of the admin team would agree that they're anticipating next year being a very turbulent one, with a lot of things that are going to have to get resolved over the summertime, as well as the beginning of the school year. And heaven forbid, we don't know what's going to happen, but could there also be, some additional concerns with the reemergence of the virus in November, which they're talking about. So I concur, and I wish that it did not happen like this. I thought we were on a good path, but unfortunately, it just did not work itself out.
Agreed. Again, I think it was a bold kind of choice we were making. Not unheard of, but it was unusual. And we got bitten by it with everything else that's happened here. So, any other questions, comments on just that announcement? I guess this is the first time we've publicly announced this. Okay, we have our search committee already formed with Becky Charniak and Julie Mulder, and they have reached out to Tracy Novick. She's our field coordinator with the MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And she's been kind enough to join us this evening. So we also have that on our agenda this evening underneath your superintendent's report. And I see that Tracy's joined us. So hi, Tracy. Maybe just introduce yourself for us and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Tracy Novick, and I'm a field director for Central Massachusetts with MASC. I live in Worcester and also serve on the Worcester School Committee. I've been with MASC for about 4 years, and as I know some of you know, there's a number of things that MASC does. Answer your emails about everything from open meeting law to superintendent evaluation to all of those sorts of things. But one of the things we also do is we do these superintendent searches because superintendents, of course, work for school committees. So I've done several this year. We've actually Gil Montague. We're talking about sort of, things changing, and we had a couple of searches that were just in their finalist phase, just as all of the pandemic started to happen. So we had a number of them that switched to doing online finalist interviews and so forth. But among the things that we're available to do is to consult on these sorts of things. Obviously, your search is unusual, not just in terms of time, but also because you'd be doing it in the middle of this. But I have already been speaking to my colleagues, and we certainly want to do everything we can to help you get through this and get you into a position, obviously, because leadership is so important right now.
Great, thank you. So I was hoping maybe you could walk us through just what some of the options are, maybe the overall search process from and how MASC assists with that.
Sure. So again, because you all are unusual, one of the things that I actually took to my executive director is I said, usually when we come in, we would make a pitch and we would be hired as consultants and would be charging you for that service over and above. Given the circumstances and given the fact that obviously no one, among other things, is going to be going anywhere, we're gonna just do this as part of your dues because you need to get this done. We need to make sure that you're set, and that's more important to us than anything else. So I would say that you have a couple of options. Generally, what we tell districts that are facing a leadership essentially gap this time of year is that it is late in the year to hire somebody new permanently. It is challenging to do a full search this late in the year. There's a couple of reasons why. One is the kind of field work and the kind of groundwork that we like to do ahead of time in terms of usually we would have, I would try to meet with the faculty. I would have a couple of public sessions that were available to the public. We'd put a survey in the field. I'd meet with the student council and try to get you a solid description of what the district stakeholders were particularly looking for at this point. There are ways, obviously, of shortening all these timelines, but that's usually something that would happen. And then usually we post the position once you've voted the position description and would have it up for 3 weeks or a month. That's the first challenge in terms of time. The other challenge in terms of time is that there are certainly administrators out there who might apply for the position who have particular constraints in their contract in terms of how much notice they have to give before they can take a different position. So just sort of put those up front, that those would be the sort of two challenges. I would say, so that's usually why we would say that you'd want to have an interim if you were looking at this. Given there are, however, and I know that your superintendent has mentioned this to you already, there also are always superintendents who are good candidates who perhaps haven't actually gotten a position for next year. In talking to my colleagues who've been doing searches across the state, I think that we all agree that that is still something that's true now. I think that there have been a couple of kind of different models that we've used this year in a couple of districts where there has been a search. They have gone for finding someone new who's a full superintendent. That has been a somewhat different timeline. So for example, my colleague Liz LaFond, who is our Western Mass and Berkshire County coordinator, did the search in Lee. What she was asked to do is after they had put together the position description, it was posted, the people who were applying came in, and frequently what happens is districts will appoint, a school committee will appoint a search committee to do an initial screening. Rather than do that, what Lee asked her to do was actually to do the screening internally, to have MASC actually do the screening and then present her with the finalists, and then they took it from there. That's an option that's available to you as well. That would also somewhat shorten the time frame, possibly, which I think could be useful to you all. It also, I think, probably draws on something that you may find useful at this point, which is that we do, by virtue of working with committees across the state, have a fairly solid perspective on who's available and who's out there, and know something of who many of the candidates are, which is not to say that we know them all, but we do know a number of them. So I think that something of that nature might be something that I would recommend. That's not to say that you have to do that. You certainly could go through appointing a screening committee, having a first round of them doing work with me to then select finalists that then would go to you. I know that part of what you all, and certainly your administration, would be sensitive to at this point is trying to make sure that you have a smooth transition. That usually is, something that's of the essence anyway, and to the points that have been made already by several of you, that given the time that we're in, having that is even probably more important than it usually would be. So you would want to make sure that that was available to you as well. But those are, as I've been thinking about it and having conversations with my colleagues, those are sort of the general kind of recommendations and thoughts that we would have at this point.
Great. That was a lot. I know I have just a couple follow-up, but no, thank you. That's good. That's exactly what we need to hear. A couple follow-up questions. What typically is the notice time that an administrator would give if they were leaving someplace else to come to us or whoever else?
Usually either 60 days or 90 days. So either 2 months or 3 months.
Okay.
And they tend to run on fiscal years. So that's, end of June.
Yeah. And we had just, Mr. Maines has only been, this is your third year, correct, Mr. Maines?
Correct.
So we just worked with you 3 years ago. In your opinion, how valid is the work that we had done 3 years ago, just to refresh that, and that becomes the basis for our search versus some of the legwork that's done up front typically?
I think I would have sort of two thoughts on that. I would want to probably pull that. Honestly, I haven't pulled your file to see what you had at that point. I think that part of that would honestly first be a question for you all of sort of, I know that you feel like you've gotten yourselves, one of the things I know that when I talked to several of you, you felt that current leadership had actually really gotten you on a very solid path and kind of established some good grounding in ways that maybe you hadn't had in the past. I guess my first thought would be whether or not you needed to revise things such that that was reflected. And I guess the other question, and again, this is something that you all as committee members would have a better feeling for than I, is are there, in your view, particular perspectives or particular things that that you've heard from the community or are hearing from the community that you think potentially need to be part of the values or the perspective that's being put into whatever the job description is. So I don't think there's necessarily anything invalid about 3 years ago. I guess I would ask what potentially has happened over the past couple of years that perhaps needs to be, as you said, refreshed or added to that.
Great, that makes sense. Thank you. Anyone else in the committee or any of our administrators? Any other questions on anything that Tracy's just shared? Becky, go ahead.
Sorry, it takes me forever to get to my unmute button. So with the 60 to 90 days, hi Tracy, by the way.
Hi there. Good to talk to you again.
With the 60 to 90 days, typically for an existing contract, then we're looking at either we hire somebody who is in a contract right now by the end of April, or our pool is people who do not currently have a contract, correct?
Or you depend on them essentially being able to negotiate their way out of that clause. Now that does happen, just so to be clear. There definitely are places in which committees or administrators, depending on who the signatory is, will actually simply just release someone from that clause of their contract.
Okay.
So it's not no deal, even if they have that in their contract.
All right, that was my only question. Thank you.
Good one.
And Tracy, that's usually an example of someone who's going up a step, or moving from a principal to a superintendent, or from an assistant superintendent to a superintendent. It seems that they tend to be more supportive because it's an opportunity for personal advancement.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I will say that there certainly are cases in which you will have even superintendents who are moving to a different superintendency have kind of hard-nosed negotiations with their school committee. But I would say that in most cases, it's not necessarily a deal killer. I would say it's probably us maybe even being overly cautious. Mostly I hate to see someone get all the way there and have it fall apart because of that contract clause.
That's a good point. Thank you. Anyone else? Other questions? No? Okay. So my other question as a follow-up is I guess the other direction of the interim. If
Mhm.
If you're trying to get someone plugged in 2 months without doing a search, what's the options and what's the process there typically look like, and what kind of candidates are you typically looking at? You have this
So much like
Yeah.
really kind of anything having to do with hiring a superintendent, much of this is at the discretion of the committee.
Yep.
There are places that actually will do a search for an interim, post it and have people apply and do an interview and the whole thing.
Okay.
We also do keep internally a list of people who are interested in interim superintendencies. In some cases, those are, as you have probably understood from the conversations you've already had with your own administration, in many cases, retired administrators, or people who otherwise are either moving into superintendency or something of that nature. That is a list that we can cull from. We can contact people and get them in touch with you if you want to do something that's more of an expedited process. And either have you, do an interview of a couple of people like that or something of that nature. So usually, sometimes people will simply say, I've even had districts that have said, oh, we know the work of so-and-so, we simply want to hire them. That is something that happens sometimes. But in most cases, there will be at least we're looking at these people, we're going to do an interview, and then you vote, make a selection.
And when you talk about an interim, is that typically a full year, or are there shorter term interims? And I'm thinking of an example where do we try to get someone just to get us through the summer and look to have a permanent on in September? Is that something that's done? How difficult would that be?
I think there are ones that will be shorter than a year. I would say that most terms are of a year to try to give you a typical superintendent process, or I shouldn't say a typical one, but it's sort of a more ideal superintendent search process is one that would essentially pick up when school comes back. You would have us or whoever is doing the search do all your groundwork then as the year is starting, post the position, and frequently you'd have someone hired by the holiday break, and then you'd have sort of the second half of the year to have a transition.
Okay.
So frequently when we have an interim, that will be kind of the timeline people are thinking about.
Okay.
There are certainly places I know of that instead essentially kind of have an interim come in at the beginning of the fiscal year and go through the end of the calendar year, with the idea that you would then be hiring a superintendent who could pick up in January. Of course, there are even more subject to whatever the vagaries of someone's contract are there, because of course schools
In the middle,
tend to think of themselves on a school calendar.
right. Okay. Any other questions on that, I guess, option? Or any other options that you'd like to ask Tracy about? Go ahead, Becky.
Sorry, I'll get it eventually. I guess my only other question is, given the options that we have and the current situation, what is your recommendation? And I'd be happy to hear from the administration on their take on this too.
You want to have the administration start? Because I honestly, I've gotten a couple of your takes on it, but I would be interested in hearing the administration's take too, actually.
Yeah, anyone want to jump in on that? Cindy, go ahead.
So I think we've been in this process one other time when we had an interim and they didn't complete the whole year. So that caused a problem for us at the end of the year. And I think the summer kind of went through and we were all just fumbling on our own, doing more or less our own thing. And I felt like that person really wasn't invested in the district because they knew they were only there for a short time. So that would be my concern.
Okay, that's a good point.
Anyone else? I know this is a lot to take in. So I'm thinking, I probably came into the meeting thinking that we're going to fully debate this, but tonight and come to a solution. But this may be something that we need to follow up a meeting shortly, have ourselves all kind of get our heads around this, and then come back to kind of deliberate it in a public forum. And is that the proper place for us to deliberate kind of how we go forward with this, Tracy, in your mind?
It is, yeah. I mean, and the other thing you should keep in mind, and again, I offer this because times are unusual. You also, you don't have to feel bound to make all of the decision even tonight and that kind of thing. If you want to say to me, could you put together a survey, the sort of survey that you put together usually that we could push out to our community to ask the sort of questions of what they'd be looking for in a superintendent. I could do that in the next 24 hours. You could kick it out over the weekend. And then whether you decided to move forward with an interim or a full search or an expedited search, you might have a little bit more information to start to be able to put a job description together. And I'm happy we can piecemeal parts of this as you go. And the other thing that I always want to make sure you all know is that I know a bunch of you have my cell phone and email, but you should always feel free to contact me. So if you don't make a decision tonight and think about stuff overnight and have questions tomorrow, you all should feel free to call me and say, you said this, but I'm confused about this, or can you talk more about this? That's absolutely something you should feel like you can do.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just put my 2 cents in? The guy in the
Absolutely.
chat here.
Go ahead.
My thought is that due to the situation that we're in right now, I think the smart thing to do, and this is my opinion, is to look for an interim in a short-term basis, and then do the search and try to have somebody in by January to do the transition. That's just my 2 cents right there.
That's what we're looking for. Again, I'm not sure there's a solid right answer on this, so I'm looking for feedback as much as possible, and to have a discussion on which way we think is best to go on this.
Rick, could I ask a question of Tracy? Tracy, if we were able to quickly put together the posting and get it out there, we would get a pretty quick, I would imagine we would get a pretty quick turnaround to see what their level of interest really is. And that might be a gauge as to whether or not there really is sincere and genuine interest out there, or if there really is not. And then it would sort of direct us to the interim position. Just a thought.
Well, I wish that were true. Here's something that always sounds like a joke, but actually is the case. In our experience, and this is becoming more and more true, whatever we establish as a deadline for superintendent applications, we get between half and 2/3 of the application on that last day.
Right.
And that always sounds like a joke. And I always make a point of telling students that because, I say people talk to you about deadlines and let's talk about superintendents. So I wish there were a way of doing that. Part of what we've done internally is we looked at our recent searches and who we thought were strong, in particular Central Massachusetts applicants that haven't yet gotten a position, and we think there probably are some good candidates who might be interested. So I think I haven't actually had any conversations with any of them, just to be clear. I think you probably have some prospects, but I don't know that would work. I wish it would, because that would be great. And it's honestly one of the things I always had to warn search committees about, because they always call me like after the position's been posted for 2 weeks and ask me how many applications there have been. Yeah, I don't know that would actually give us any information, unfortunately.
Okay.
So it sounds like the recommendation is that you really need to choose a path and stay on that path.
Right. And honestly, I think part of what you probably need to do is, you do need to decide, are you looking to hire, or are you looking to sort of have someone for the year? And then from there, you can decide what kind of a search or process you want to have. I do think you have a couple of options available to you, given the amount of time that you have. the one thing I would be maybe a little nervous about is whether or not you have enough sort of time. And also, I don't know how to put this exactly, but I feel like everybody has sort of a smaller capacity to take things on right now, just because of all that we're all kind of coping with. And it might be difficult to appoint a search committee. I don't want to tell you not to do that because it can be an important and helpful part of the process.
Right.
I think it could be a challenge. I don't want to say that it's impossible, but that could be harder than usual.
Brett, a point to keep in mind is that you do have 3 certified superintendents within the group here.
Yep.
They could be a way station if they are not internal candidates and selected. They could then serve as a way station. I have already indicated to the committee that if they need me to stick around for a bit, I could also stick around for a short period of time if that's the direction the committee would like to go. But I'm just saying that you do have that with 3 candidates, 3 certified in the district itself.
No, that's a good point, and I appreciate that point. And my biggest concern with that again is I think we're worried about being just all hands on deck as we move forward from here. So to try to pull someone out of their current role to cover our superintendencies now just leaves another hole in the ship. And again, just my experience is that this thing only works with everybody kind of working together on it. So to pull from one place to another. Not to say I'm close to it, but it's definitely a concern of mine, for sure.
Brett, I have 2 things
Sure, go
to
ahead.
say. If I manage to take myself off mute. One, and this may be just totally off base, but the idea of an interim, I kind of agree with Cindy. Oh God, I hit the wrong button again.
You're okay.
Yeah, no, you all disappeared from my screen.
Oh.
I have the fear of an interim not necessarily being invested.
Okay.
Knowing that they're only there for a short time, which in the best of times, I think probably would work, but I wonder with everything going on now and as difficult as the next year promises to be, that just kind of gives me a little pause. So the idea of not that it couldn't be done and not that there couldn't be a phenomenal interim out there. The other thing, and this just is the idea that Tracy was saying, sometimes you have somebody that comes in January. And I don't know, but if we did not find somebody, would it be totally unheard of to have our own potential interim, our own potential retiree do a half a year so that we could do a search in the fall to have someone start in January? I know it doesn't sound like that's ideal.
Yeah. Mr. Maines, maybe you can speak to this better, but I think what Kelly's asking is could you stay on a full-time basis until the end of this year? I think the provisions that we were looking to, I don't know if take advantage of is the right way, to keep you on after you have already filed your retirement paperwork is restricts the number of hours, the amount of pay that you could receive for this year.
So that would be a limitation. Is there's a restriction on the number of hours in the amount of money that I can earn. I'm not saying that it couldn't be, but I'd have to investigate that with the MTRS.
Totally understandable, and it was just more of a, if we couldn't find somebody, is that a potential possibility?
Well, I mean, I think that it certainly is, and if that's something that the committee feels is gonna be best for the district. I mean, but my concern in this is that we thought we had a plan, and then all of a sudden it fell apart, and I feel badly, despite the fact that we realize that it can't happen, because I'm still committed to what we do. And so I'm supposed that I would certainly be willing to sit and chat with everybody about that to see if there's a solution in there for everybody.
So Kelly, I think I've been thinking something similar with this, but I think I was more thinking, if we just do a full search, looking for, a permanent superintendent, and it takes us into the summer, and we wouldn't have anybody hired until July, August, let's say time frame. Could Mr. Maines, stay on full time until such time that we have someone hired? I think he would probably be able to do that within the confines of the agreement with MTS.
But the other thing that someone may want to look into is I saw a reference to part of the emergency declaration or emergency suspensions the governor has done being something around the capacity of retirees to earn particular amounts of money. And I haven't investigated that. That seems like something, though, that perhaps Mr. Maines needs to look into that with MTRS, or you may want to ask your legal counsel to look into it.
Okay.
I haven't seen the details on that, but if that's a road that you all are interested in going down that Mr. Maines is open to, that might, I think that the intent is actually, honestly, potentially this kind of situation of, wait, we suddenly are going to be facing a gap in leadership we weren't expecting. So that as the committee is talking about such things, you may want to look into that further.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this topic, or just thoughts on moving forward? Do we want to, go ahead, Becky.
So I don't have like a firm thought, and obviously I think that this should be a conversation, but at the same time, I also think that, Mr. Maine's contract ends at the end of June. And I think whatever net we decide to cast, I think we need to get moving on it. I think that that's been a struggle this year to kind of just make a decision and go with it. And I think that we need to do that. And so I could sort of be talked, I think, one way or the other with interim versus full-time. My inclination, especially with the volatility of what's going on and what could happen in the next year, is to say, let's see what we can do for a full-time candidate. If it doesn't happen, then nobody's going to force our hand to hire somebody that is not fit. But yeah, I think obviously that's open for discussion. The one thing that I feel pretty strongly about is that Tracy mentioned putting something out there to the community in terms of their take on what the needs are, what they value. If that's something that can be put out in 24, 48 hours, I don't see why we shouldn't do that. I don't think there's any harm in that piece, at least.
Yeah, I think both really good points. I do think we have to make a decision very quickly. If we can't come to one tonight, I would be looking for us to have another open meeting on Monday. I think the next time we could get something posted and have it, and look to make a final decision there. I am also, my initial thought, and again, I feel like I do need to sleep on this a bit, is I'd like to move forward looking for a permanent, take a shot at that versus go the interim route is my initial thinking after hearing this. But we're willing to have more discussion on that, if we need to. But I just want to throw that out there for discussion. Tracy, with regards to either go in the search for a permanent route or search the interim, do the starts of both those processes look very similar?
If you want to do a sort of start by having a community conversation, yes, they would. If you want, sometimes with an interim, essentially what they'll do is post a sort of pretty straightforward, where Douglas, we're looking for a superintendent kind of thing,
Yeah.
with some description, obviously, of the community and so forth, and some deadlines, so that those postings are sometimes a little bit more boilerplate, depending on how the committee wants to do it.
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions real quick? Becky, the issue of the survey, I think, is a good point, but the question I think is for Tracy. Do you generate the survey, or does the school department generate the survey?
We have sort of a standard set of questions that sometimes I would then sort of give to the committee to just sort of look at and say, is there anything that I'm missing here? I sometimes will even do that offline, of sort of send it out to the committee, BCC the committee, and say, get back to me if there's anything here that you think we're missing. You can even, I'm trying to think, I can probably even send you out some of the ones that we've done previously. They tend to be asking kind of big picture in general. What's going particularly well in the district right now? What are some issues you see the district dealing with right now? What do you see the biggest needs in leadership being? Although obviously those questions are kind of put in a narrower fashion. And frequently they can give some idea to the committee of, are you looking for someone? I mean, are you looking for a curricular leader? Are you looking for a budgetary leader? What are the strengths that the committee that the community particularly feels in need of? I will also say that it is unusual for the committee to be particularly surprised by things, but in some cases it can give some degree of credence and strength to whatever it is the committee is actually deciding to post when they put together the description to say, you know, we particularly are looking for X, Y, and Z in terms of either experiences or strengths or sort of professions and pieces of things that are in their backgrounds.
And then the other question I had, Tracy, is I'm trying to remember if, and Cindy, maybe you know this better than I, maybe you remember it. Did we post and did we do a formal posting when I came on board? Because I know we did previously when my predecessor was hired, but I'm trying to remember if we did, and if we did, if that document exists and it can be, while we're trying to get prepared, we can be making adjustments to that posting so that it's ready to go if the committee decides to go on Monday. Let's do this. The posting should, we would just be updating what was the existing posting, because some of it is just standard information that you're going to share. But I don't remember, and I don't know if you remember, if there was one 3 years ago. There was?
I would say yes, because that was a formal process that we went through. So I would say yes, there is a posting. There had to be one.
Yes, it was definitely a posting done,
Right.
but there's always the same pretty much formal process that's followed.
Right. I'm just thinking if it needs to be updated, dates, names, things like that. Let's get started on that, and just so that you're getting to the point. And then last thing I'll say is, Tracy, I appreciate the fact that you sort of in compliance, in agreement with me that I know that there are some talented individuals in Central Mass, and I'm optimistic that someone's going to want to take the opportunity to get into their first superintendency, and I think there's some real talent in there. I've been in this area for a long time, and I've been on the assistant principals, and superintendent groups all the way through, and I've been at a lot of meetings with them, and there's some talented people out there. Again, they need to want to make that jump, and you hope that they do. But I'm glad to hear that you felt the same way about the region.
No, yeah, I would say that that honestly it probably happens every year that when we get to this point and say, dang, how come they haven't actually gotten a position yet? So it,
Right.
As you know, in many cases, it's a question of making a good match.
Right.
I'm gonna, Julie, your hand raised there, so we'll get
Yeah,
to
I don't know. Like, do you just like start talking? Is that how you? I don't know how to do this all. I don't
No,
know
but
why. I've done it so
the
many
hand
times.
thing is great. So if
Okay.
you don't know, on Zoom, there's the ability to raise your hand with a little icon there, and Julie's done that. So we're gonna get to her.
No, I just wanted to say that I had a question. So do we need to actually officially hire Tracy, first of all, in order for her to continue forward? Because I don't know that we've discussed that. And I just want to make sure everyone's in agreement, because I think that she'd be phenomenal to help us with.
Right.
And I am just hoping that, you know, I know we're having this discussion, but I hope we could just do something like moving forward as soon as possible. Because although it is a tough time, I think that we may have some people that actually do have a little bit more time on their hands right now. I don't, but I still have enough time to do this.
Yeah.
But, you know, so that's another thought too, is right now, while a lot of people are at home or, you know, have less work going on, maybe there will be more people out there. But I think that there's a question of whether Tracy can do it on an expedited thing where she kind of takes the course where she does a lot of, I think how I understood it, Tracy, is that you'll do a lot of the screening and versus us having a committee that would do the screening. Am I hearing that correctly? Is that something we have to decide on?
If so to back up and answer your first question, if you decided to do a full search and go for hiring a new superintendent permanently, one of the options that generally speaking you would have is that you could hire a consultant to do it. MASC is one of the consulting groups that does it. There's also NASDAQ does them. There's a couple of other ones. So generally, if we were having this initial discussion in normal times, I would say, as your field director, I want to be upfront with you. This is something we do, but you also can do other things. Under the circumstances, what I'm telling you as your field director is that rather than having to hire us as a consultant, given the fact that, among other things, I'm not going to be driving back and forth to Douglas, not that it's a trip, I mean, I'm in Worcester, and doing all those kinds of, that kind of work, and talking to my colleagues and then talking to our executive director, he said, we're just going to consider this part of what we would offer them. So now you can still decide that what you actually want to do is go hire a consultant, and you should know that that is an option that's available to you. If you want to work with MASC and have us do it, we would simply do it because you're members of the association, and we want to make sure that you have this taken care of in this unusual time. If you then decide to do that, and you decide you want to do a search, you can do, I would say, one of two things as part of the process. Generally speaking, the committee would put out a call to the community, appoint a search committee, have that search committee meet an executive session to do the initial screening of candidates. So what would happen is I would give them all of the applications we received. They would be able to review them confidentially. That part of the process is confidential. They would select some to interview. They would interview them in executive session, and then they would make a selection from that group of who to put forward to you as finalists, which is when the process would become public again. Anything that you as a committee do, you have to do in public session. So once you then received the finalists, you then would go forward with public interviews and a public selection. What Lee chose to do because of questions of time, and something that, as talking to my colleagues and talking to the rest of the staff at MASC, that we thought might be useful for you to consider, is to have all of the applications come into our office, have us do the screening based, again, on sort of the description that you put together, what we know of the community, what we know of the candidates, and then have us present finalists to you. That is not something that you have to do. You can absolutely choose to do a different process. The suggestion, honestly, is made more in the question of time, and also in the question of sort of everything else in the universe that's going on right now. But that is an option that's available to you in either, whatever you choose to do. If you want to have me do this work, this is work that is covered as far as contracts and everything else, because you're members of the association.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to sign some kind of formal document with you, and
no, and you wouldn't owe us any more money.
we greatly appreciate that, and
yes.
thank your executive director and everyone else at the home office.
It only seemed fair to us, honestly, both because of time and also because of the pandemic. Yeah, I mean, you guys, there's only so much there's only so many options you have at this point. So we want to make sure that you're in good hands.
Thank you.
I think that's important, Brett, because I think we need to decide, who we're going to use, and then go from there. So.
Yeah, my thinking is we can probably decide that tonight.
Right.
I think we're already leaning pretty heavily this way, so I'll take objections to that. But I think by the end of the night, we can at least take a vote on that we want to, go and, who we want to use, to use MASC. And if we need more time to decide exactly what form that search will take, then, we'll take that. But I think that has to happen by Monday, in my mind. I do have a couple more follow-up questions, Tracy. But if anyone wants to jump in, please do before I go. Okay. On the survey, how is the survey typically administered? Is it an email situation? Is it publicly posted? Is it a hard letter?
Yeah, so usually we recommend that you post a link off your website and then use whatever capacity you have in terms of communication. So if there are, right, so if you use an email blast to parents, if you have ways of blasting things out to faculty, If the community has some sort of electronic version, generally speaking, I also say be sensitive to those who are not online. And if you need to leave copies at the senior center or whatever, let's do that. Probably not an ideal time for that. But essentially whatever communication capacities you have to provide the link is what we recommend. And I generally ask, and what part of what the survey has is one of the first questions is essentially what's your relationship to the district? So are you a staff member, a parent, a student, a member of the community, an alum, those kinds of things. So you can at least get some idea of what the distribution of the answers is.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, I think Donna could probably speak to that. I know that we do the one-call email blasts that go out to all the parents.
Yes.
I think
Yes, we
Donna's-
can get all the parents.
Yeah, I was thinking we could do that as well as maybe even just do a one-call phone call as well for those that maybe don't have emails, just to say you can visit the district website, although if you don't have email.
They could call in and ask for something to be mailed to them.
Yeah, I guess, make that an option as well. Okay. What else? Anyone else want to kind of weigh in on what their initial thoughts are, or does anyone feel strongly that they want to take a vote on which direction to go tonight? Or does anyone not feel comfortable with that and feel that they need to sleep on this? Don't all speak at once. You're all on mute. All right, I'm just gonna weigh in. My initial thinking right now is I'm in favor of the permanent search and letting MASC do the initial screening for purposes of expediting things. Where I stand. So
I'm in agreement with that, and I don't need to sleep on it. But if more of the administrators or the committee want to argue, I am all ears.
yeah, and I kind of put that question out to the committee, but I would ask all the administrators to weigh in if you need some time to get feedback to us, and you would want to wait until tomorrow to provide that feedback. I'm open to doing that. So.
Personally, I agree with both of you, Julie.
I agree.
I'm in as well.
Okay, so we'll take a formal vote on that as part of our consent agenda here. Okay, anything else before we let Tracy go? And Tracy, you're welcome to stick around, but I'm sure you got a million other things to do. So Tracy, as you know, she's also a school committee member in Worcester, so she had her own.
I already had my meeting today, though. We
Oh, you did?
that
Okay. I just can't thank you enough. I've been following you from afar on Twitter and Facebook, and just watching all the things that you do for MASC and just for schools in general. And I can't thank you enough for all that, but in particularly for the help that you've given us here tonight.
Sure. And like I said, for all of you, administrators and school committee members, you should feel free to get in touch with me tonight, tomorrow, at any point if there's more questions. And if you can just, once you've made whatever decision you're going to make, let me know if you want me to start rolling forward with whatever you feel like needs to be done right away. That I'm happy to jump on that right away tomorrow.
I did just remember one other question. So we do already have a search subcommittee formed, and that is Becky and Julie. I guess what's the norm for how much the overall committee turns over to them and asks for them to bring back to us, and how much is everybody involved? I guess could you speak briefly to that, or is that more drawn out than I'm thinking it is?
Yeah. So, and as a subcommittee of a public body, they're actually subject to the public meeting laws.
Yeah.
So honestly, any meeting that they have should be a posted public session.
Yep.
It's up to you. I mean, could they do a screening? I would need to look and see whether or not, I think that they probably, if you wanted to have them be part of the screening process, I believe that they themselves could either alongside MASC or on their own be the initial screening and then have them forward finalists.
Okay.
That frequently what happens with superintendent subcommittees is they end up being the people who spearhead any negotiations afterward. And if there's a screening committee, frequently they're the ones that are sort of chairing and co-chairing the screening committee. That has been most of my experience with subcommittees of school committees in terms of searches. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That's most of what I can come up with.
That's very helpful. Thank you. That was my last thing, I promise.
Well, you have my email and you have my cell phone, so if anything comes up, I know I'll hear from you.
Thank you again.
Okay, thanks.
Good night. So, oh boy, thank you all for that discussion. I think that was very helpful. I think we return to that later in our consent agenda, but I do want to return to Mr. Mains's report. Next, I had on the agenda, I know it changed. I think I'm looking at the original version of the agenda, but Good Friday up next.
Just a reminder that this Good Friday is designated on our school year calendar as a no school day. So I did send out a letter to parents and to staff indicating as such, so that Friday would be considered a no school day. I did indicate, by the way, to students that if they so desire, they could continue with academic work, but it was considered a day of a school closure day. The next thing I had was April vacation, and we originally had talked a little bit about that. We were waiting to see how the state was going to look at the days and so forth. So the Commissioner Riley just recently released an update on April vacation for any school districts that are looking to continue with the remote learning through the April vacation, that they said that those days would count. So right now we are scheduled to close on June 19th. If we did take advantage of those 4 days, we would close on Monday, June 15th. The issue then becomes we would be conducting classes during the April vacation, and I thought that perhaps the committee would want to discuss that. Right now, those are considered no school days, and they can remain no school days. My original viewpoint was, sort of like, let's just keep trudging along. But I think the more we've been doing this, I think the more everybody could probably use a little bit of a break. And that April vacation may, in fact, be a good idea to observe. I did get some feedback from the DTA, and they're kind of 60-40 on going forward with the lessons. But I did indicate to them that I appreciate their input, but the decision still rests solely with the committee, and that it would be your decision if you wish to alter what we're already scheduled for.
So I'm interested, there's 60-40 in favor of keeping vacation or in favor of teaching through vacation?
Teaching through.
60-40 in favor of teaching through. Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
You know what? I honestly thought that would be a good idea until you just said that if they don't take school vacation, then that means that's less time. It'll be more time in June. So what happens if the kids end up actually going back to school in June?
They would get 4 more days, Julie. You're absolutely right.
Of actual being in school. So the chances of us going back, I don't even know if that's even going to happen, but the fact that they'd be in school for a little bit more time is very motivating to me.
Right. And June 19th is not that late. We've been out on June 30th, so.
Yeah.
So would the DTA need to take a formal vote of their members on this, or is this something we is purely in our corner, I guess?
So right now it exists as an April vacation, and we would have.
Right, but if we would want to work through it,
right?
I guess, how would that work?
And again, my original thought was that we would, let's just keep following along and we'll be all set. But
yeah, and
I think a break is what people. We talked as an admin team for a couple of hours today, and some of our admin who are also doing double duty as parents and teachers and so forth. There seems to be a little bit of a sense that this, could be beneficial to take a little bit of a break. And I think we're hearing from parents that, this is not what I signed up for, and it's.
Well, wouldn't Patriots Day be a day off though?
I know Brett rang the bell at 9 o'clock, and the kids were in the seats and they were working, but it's a lot.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I was just saying, wouldn't you have Patriots Day anyway as a holiday? So you definitely have Monday off either way.
You definitely have
right?
Monday off, correct?
Yes, we only be 4 days back.
And so my only hang up, and I understand the concern about the administration, but I feel like the kids, as a working parent, I feel like that's the one thing that gives them something other than electronics and sitting in the house and watching movies. It's like, well, did you do your schoolwork? Not that one of my kids does it, but my other two do, and it gives them something to, I hate to say it, but to look forward to stimulate them. I feel like it's a connection that some of the teachers have with students that maybe, maybe there's students that are having some tough times right now, and maybe that connection is important for mental reasons, for mental health.
Right.
That's my personal thought on that, more so than even academics, actually.
Mr. Delaney, you want to chime in?
Just to echo Mrs. Mulder's point, we've put incredible effort into a full stop of running a brick and mortar school and a full start to online institutions, which has been new for everybody. And we have momentum. We have incredible momentum. I asked if we can keep with the momentum, but find a middle ground, take the Patriots Day, give them an extra day, right? Take one day and then we come back that Wednesday. We don't have a full spring break, but you give them something. You give them 4 days to catch our breath, and then we get back to it. I'd hate to lose the momentum we have. We're trying to keep kids engaged. We had to go wrangle kids who are running about the countryside. God love them. They've been waiting for this a long time. Why do I need to go to school? There is no mandate for the educational continuity that we're doing. And the kids that we have are learning for the right reasons, because learning is always the right thing to do. And to set them free for 9 days and then try to wrangle those kids back, it's just going to be harder than it was to even convince people why we're doing this. This is my 2 cents. I ask we find a middle ground, give people a breath, but then let's keep the momentum going. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Delaney, you just altered my perception. Because I went into this going, the chances of us going back at this point, personally, I don't see that as a large chance. So to me, I'm thinking these kids have been asked to completely change how they're doing things, and then you're basically asking them to work from the middle of March to the middle of June without an extended break. So my thought coming in was, I think they need a break. But I totally respect Mr. Delaney's position of we've got some momentum going. 9 days is a long time. Maybe there is a middle ground. I do think they need a break, though. I mean, I've only got one, and he's in high school, and he's doing his stuff. I can't imagine the parents who are trying to do this with multiple small children like I had at one point. And I'm sure that having the structure is helpful to them. But at the same time, I'm watching my high schooler, and I can see he and his friends, some sort of break would be beneficial if I'm going to tell them that, yeah, you're going to keep doing this until the middle of June. Just my opinion.
And Kelly, I would like to speak. You are right, and I concur. We need a break. I need Friday off. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
My teachers are exhausted. This is very hard. What these teachers are doing. Sorry?
I think that's the overriding point. I think everybody is, Brian, you were absolutely right when you first said that, all of a sudden we went from the bell rings, everybody comes in, everybody sits down, the bell rings, everybody goes home, and to this new experience, and without really much lead time, and man, I think that a lot of people are starting to get a little bit frazzled, and I just think my original reaction was that we should just plow through that. I've gone completely the opposite now. I really think that everybody could use that break, even if it is only, like you said, nobody's going to fly to Bora Bora, Brett, because there's no way to get out of here. So, but that's just my opinion as well.
Go ahead, Becky. I'll give you a minute to get off mute.
I don't see the raise your hand icon. I'm looking for it.
Me either.
I see it on Josh's screen, but what? Anyway.
Click on participants. If you click at the bottom of your screen,
yeah,
participants 16, you click on that.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom of that page.
Yeah, thank you.
See, we have all become exceedingly expert at Zoom meetings.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney.
Thank you. I was like, I don't want to log out by accident. All right. So mostly I have a question. Initially when I was thinking about this, I see from parental experience that I think that it would be easier to kind of keep going in a way. I am concerned that if I have my child do nothing for 9 days, then she'll want to do nothing for forever. She's just starting to accept the fact that like it's school at home. It's not just home at home, it's school at home. But I'm really concerned about teacher burnout. So I'm like completely shocked that 60% would want to plug through April vacation. So I'm just wondering if maybe like any of you can give us clarity. Is it primarily because of what Mr. Delaney is saying, that we don't want to lose traction? Or is it largely because we don't know what's going to go on, so it's better just to like finish up the year a little bit earlier? But yeah, here's what I think. I think if there is a vacation, the teachers have given my daughter's grade so many resources that as a parent, if I want to keep her active and want to keep her busy with resources, or if somebody's behind on something, there's plenty of material for her to be engaged if I want to choose to do that. So that's sort of where I was leaning, like personally as a parent, is like, let's take the vacation, give the teachers a break. If I feel like my child would benefit from continuing to work, I can choose to continue to have her to practice stuff. So it's a very long-winded question. Why would teachers not want to take a break?
It really is an excellent point.
Can I speak?
Go ahead, Desi.
So Mr. Reardon, who was the DTA president, he's actually watching YouTube, I guess, all this on YouTube, and he just texted me to let me know that the breakdown basically the survey was 60% of the staff wanted to work through, 25% didn't care, and only 50% wanted vacation.
15%. Okay.
And
That's for our school or for the district for MASC?
That's for the school district, our district.
Oh, wow. I think we should respect that then.
So
That says a lot.
Cindy, you had a point?
Yeah, I can see both sides of it, but then I'm hearing from some of our parents who both work and they don't get home until 6:30 at night. So I'm thinking that might be a good week, for someone to do some catch-up work, and, parents that are not able to do the work with their kids all day long. So, I mean, I can see both sides of it, but I worry about some of the parents that have 3 children and there's one device, so they're all taking turns. It's just something else to think about.
That's a good point. Again, my initial thoughts were that, if I thought this thing was really gonna, we were really gonna be back to school on May 4th, I'd be in favor of just working through, because it felt like, okay, you're gonna take a break and then you're back for a week before you're actually going back to brick and mortar, and to be able to pick up momentum again in that week before you go back to brick and mortar is, unlikely, I would think. But if we really think this thing's going out till June, I was leaning more towards, it's worth taking the break. But I don't have real strong feelings either way. I kind of like Mr. Delaney's approach of let's split the baby on this one a little bit, and maybe give an extra day or 2. Go ahead, Neely. You're on mute. You got it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, on a personal level, my initial thought was we need the break. I've spoken to a lot of parents, and they're getting used to educating their kids and watching the staff work. I think right now they're definitely getting into their groove, but then it's the whole thing of sustainability and are they going to be able to keep up at this pace? But then in looking at Brian's approach to it, it's sort of like when you don't know what to do, if you can find a happy medium, you take the happy medium, and it sort of, I think it satisfies both sides of it. It does allow people to rest and to sleep and to get their heads back. But at the same time, it keeps us in the groove. So I like that idea. I think it satisfies all needs.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lisa.
I did my own poll and it came back 50-50, which was no help at all. But I did hear Mr. Delaney's take on it from certain people. And my concern would be the AP kids if we did take the week off, because they've already, if other towns push through, are they going to lose that 9 days? Will they have enough information to give to them to keep studying during that time? Will they do it? Because their tests are coming up so quick. So I guess Mr. Romano could speak to that, maybe?
Try.
Is he there?
Wait, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. Now I forgot the question.
AP.
Oh, AP. Since the test itself is, I'm not too worried about AP just because the test itself is going to be so scaled back. I think that they'll be okay if we were to take a few days here and there. I'm actually in favor of like the Brian Delaney plan. We have a 4-day week this week. Maybe we take next Friday and Patriots Day, and then that's 2 more 4-day weeks, so that it would help to keep that momentum. But I think that we would be okay, even with AP.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Just their thoughts on it?
I like that 4-day week thought.
So you could do it, you could just take the Monday and the Tuesday off and come back to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday as well.
Yeah, that might actually be better.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in favor of 4-day weeks rest of my career if we're making sweeping changes.
To Mrs. Brown's point, that's your 50-50. You gave him a break and you kept him going.
So again, going back to the ETA, if we would decide to work through, again, we'll just make that decision and they support that decision. Has that been indicated?
No, I believe we need to get an agreement with them.
Okay.
Because we're changing the calendar.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like they're in favor. At least a majority of them are, or at least don't care.
Right. But I think that they would need to. So if I think what would have to happen is the proposal would have to go forward. They would then have to poll their group and see where they end up, yay or nay, and come back to us.
So we would be making a decision tonight if we did want to change things. That would not be a binding decision yet until we heard back from the DTA and work things out with them. Is that correct?
I believe yes.
Okay. Okay, where do we stand, folks? We want to make a motion on this, or we want to just, if we want to do nothing and just have the vacation, we do nothing.
Let's make a motion.
Okay. Did I hear a motion from Ms. Mulder?
Yeah. I don't know how to exactly put it together though. I think that to me, I'd like to do the motion based on what Mr. Delaney stated, doing a 4-day week. But how would you want to phrase that, and then I can still move it?
Yeah. So I guess the motion would be that we would
Alter the April vacation.
Alter April vacation and remove the last 3 days of April vacation. So we would only have 1 day of April vacation.
Right. So April 22nd, 23rd, and 24th
would now be school days.
would now be school days.
So moved.
So I have a motion from Julie.
Second.
We have a second from Lisa. Any other discussion on this matter? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Let's do a roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Okay. So, Mr. Maines, can you now bring that forward to the DTA for us, or is this something you'd like me to?
Reach out to Mr. Reardon tomorrow morning and let him know that that's the proposal.
Okay.
I'm confident that he's going to come back in favor of that modification, and I will inform the committee, and then we would need to get that out to parents because that'll be a change. again, not that anybody's going to be able to go anywhere, that will be
Yeah.
changed in the calendar. And we will need to let them know that we are seeing the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th as school days.
Great.
And that would then move our final day to
Up 3 days, right? To the 16th.
what would be instead of being June 15th, we're moving it 3 days. So originally the 19th, 18th, so it'll be the 16th now. The final day of school will be June 16th.
It's something.
Good idea.
Okay.
I will bring that forward to them tomorrow morning,
Thank you.
and I will contact the committee, let them know.
Okay. Thank you. Next on my agenda, Mr. Maines, was discussion on stipend positions.
Okay, so as everybody's aware, everything is contingent upon coming back to school. Presently, we have spring season for the high school and the middle school on hold. And the question there's a couple of questions to be discussed here. If we are able to come back, the understanding that I have is the MIAA has agreed to an abridged season. And I don't know that they would have state championships, but I think they would have district playoffs.
Mr. Maines, want me to talk about that?
Do you know what it is? Yeah, you're on the management committee, so you might as well do that.
Yeah, so we voted that there would be no state tournament, that to be specifically just a sectional tournament. If we were able to resume the school and then spring sports beginning once we went back to school. So there'll be no state tournament, just sectional tournaments.
The other shoe that drops there is that if we do not return to school, there will be no spring season. And the question is, will those stipend positions be funded? And the other piece of it is that it's really hard to make a decision at this point because you don't know where you're at, whether the season is whether we're going to come back and they are going to play a season or not going to play a season. And my recommendation would be, again, I just wanted to make sure that the committee had an opportunity to talk about it. But again, I think that it's going to be something that is going to be dependent upon whether or not we can get back to school. We may not know that until, the earliest we'll know that is right before May 4th. So.
Right. Yeah, this feels like something that I'm glad you made us aware of it, but it feels like something we need to defer for now.
Right. So it was brought to my attention, and I wanted to make sure that was something that the committee was aware. The question is, what's going to happen if there is no season, and then also to share with the committee that there's a very real possibility of an abridged season if we get back and so forth.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Comments?
I hate to be a nudge, Mr. Argold, and thank you very much for the time today. I'm sorry, but I had a very nice conversation with the athletic director at the high school, Mary Sokol.
Yes.
And I did want to represent a point that she made that I thought was valid, that coaches and the athletic directors and some of the staff, they were anticipating a season. They wanted a season to happen. So they've done the things. They went to PDs, they went to meetings. They have done work in the name of the district, in the name of the teams they represent. I would ask, as you think about this, if we could pay them something for services rendered, even though we don't have, not in full, but a portion as a appreciation for their commitment to being hopeful and wanting to serve these kids and doing the right thing, and compensate them for the time. Not full, but just something to consider if you're able to. I thought Mrs. Sokol brought that up. I thought it was an excellent point. I just wanted to carry that message.
Thank you for raising the point. It's not something I think I considered that, even though the seasons aren't in swing, there would have been prep being done prior to the season and prior to all this happening. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So I think, again, it's a decision that we probably make in a couple of weeks.
Okay. So I'm just trying to, messing with the buttons. And I think the next thing that we have on the docket is, before I forget, I will make a note to ask Lauren to keep this on her record so that as we get closer, that we put this back up for conversation, especially if we hear that the school year is going to be canceled.
Okay.
Then the last thing I believe was discussion on special education team chair, or excuse me, I'm not sure if Neely is going to take the lead on this, or is that yes or no? Yeah, so I think we're going to cover this on a consent agenda as well. Do you want to wait until then, or you want to cover it now? My inclination is just wait until consent agenda and address it all then. Is that okay? Fine. That's fine. And if I could just ask the indulgence of the committee, I'd like to share some thoughts. I did preface this with Brett earlier. To take a moment to directly address the committee, express my sincere apologies for any damages that may have resulted with regards to me as your superintendent. I can only apologize to the members of this committee for the negative impacts of our collaboration with the emergency operation representatives. Certainly not my intent for this to result in a poor outcome. I would never want to bring something negative towards negative attention or a negative reaction to the district. It falls on my shoulders. I want the committee to know that I am apologetic. I will endeavor to repair relationships with the members of the EOC and town officials, see if we can't reestablish our investment and concern for the mission. I also want to extend apologies to the EOC and the community itself. I've spent the entirety of my time in Douglas trying to be a positive influence and a positive role model in the way that I've conducted my work. During my remaining time, I hope that I will be able to provide solid leadership to the district during what are clearly going to be turbulent times. And I just wanted to take the moment to express that. I have reached out to a couple of members in the community as well to try to speak with them directly as well on that topic. Thank you, Mr. Maines. I appreciate you sharing that. Just as background, we had at the Board of Selectmen's meeting last evening. Kevin and I both attended, and things didn't go well. And I think we're in a bit of a rocky place with folks on the municipal side. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I appreciate that Kevin is reaching out and trying to repair things. I'll just again reiterate, I have tremendous confidence in this school district, in all of its employees, to keep pushing this district forward in its primary mission of educating our students. And I think we're doing a tremendous job on that. And the town's been looking for our help in some other areas, and I think we stumbled a bit there. I think with some good reasons. I think we're on difficult terrain, in kind of uncharted territories for ourselves, and it's not surprising that you might stumble along the way there. But I think still plenty of time for us to pick ourselves up and move forward. And I think Mr. Maines has started that process for us, and again, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. That was all I had for the superintendent's report. Okay, thank you, Mr. Maines. School committee and subcommittee reports, accounts payable report.
Okay, on March 24th, 2020, I signed 6 batches totaling $418,282.74. And on March 31st, 2020, I signed 7 batches totaling $55,273.26, and nothing unusual.
Great. Any questions for Lisa on that? Seeing none. Okay, let's move to our consent agenda. So first I have our February 25th, 2020 meeting minutes. I can share these on the screen if you'd like. I know these were shared a little bit differently this time versus Google Docs. Would anyone like that, or does anyone have any things that they noted as issues with these minutes?
Excuse me, Brett?
Yes.
The minutes themselves say February 24th, but the agenda says February 25th.
Oh, when was that meeting? Actually, yeah, so the top
let me
line
just
says
double check.
24th and the first line says 25th. And I believe that meeting was on the 25th.
Okay, so there's an amendment right there. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that was Tuesday the 25th. So,
Tuesday, right.
yep. So we need to amend just the heading of the minutes to read February 25th, 2020. So yeah, can I just pause here for a second? With amendments like these, does our minute taker just pick that up for us and then send us amendments afterwards?
I usually share them with Lauren to make the adjustments on the final record.
Okay, and so even during these times that's happening? Sorry, I got distracted too. So.
The answer to that is yes.
Okay.
I usually make notations and share them with Lauren. And then Lauren, I'm going to stop there. I don't know if Lauren reaches out to Mary Wright and she makes the adjustments. I believe that's
okay.
How it goes, but maybe Courtney knows better.
It's a combination thereof.
Okay, thank you. I just know we had some amendments last time, and it hadn't hit me under normal circumstances. All of a sudden, I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, does this need to change at all? So thank you for continuing that. And any other amendments to these minutes? Okay, if not, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the February 25th, 2020 School Committee / Finance Committee meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
I got a motion from Lisa.
Second.
And a second from Kelly. Any other discussion? All those in favor, can I get a roll call vote, please? Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes. Next, we have our April 1st meeting minutes from last week. Anybody noted any discrepancies, amendments needed on those? Okay. If there are no amendments, I'll be looking for a motion to approve our April 1st, 2020 school committee meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Motion from Lisa.
Second.
A second from Becky. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. I'll take a roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Yep, that's my daughter's homework. There we go. Next, District Student Opportunity Act proposal.
Okay, so I believe that you received that document from Lauren.
I did.
Okay, so that's our formal state submission. One of the requirements for the Student Opportunity Act funding, which I think Courtney and I would probably agree is in jeopardy at this point, based on what's going to happen with regards to the economic impacts within the state. But we needed to submit a short form because we're not receiving a large sum of money. And we rooted the 3-year plan around our collaborative instructional model that we began implementing at the high school last year, or perhaps it was the year before. Last year, I think, Josh, right? Last year. And John, you've implemented it full bore this year at the elementary school. So we figured that was a good place for us to go because it is a significant change in our delivery model. And it is something that we've made a commitment to in that this is a 3-year submission. Each year has to be continued. It basically asks, what have you done? What do you plan on doing? Have you involved stakeholders? And the answer to those things, I believe, and Neely chime in because you also contributed with this. I believe that we have all of the things that we've submitted are affirmative, and the reason for it being on the consent agenda is because in order for it to go to the state, it does need the superintendent's signature and the chair of the school committee signature as well.
Okay.
Anything? it, right?
Okay. So I know this is past due, but I think maybe 25% of schools have actually submitted it by the deadline.
Right.
So, okay. So we'll be looking for a motion to approve the district's Student Opportunity Act proposal. Is it proposal or plan, Mr. Maines?
I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think we all know what we're referring to.
So moved.
Okay, motion from Lisa,
Second.
second from Kelly. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now we will get to Neil. Oh, sorry.
Could I thank Scott Villamere? They said they were going to send us out a document, never came, but Scott was able to modify the sample document, and that's how we submitted it. And to Lauren, who took my original Google document that was then shared with Neely, who then finalized it and sent it along to Lauren, who then sent it to Scott, who submitted it. So I wanted to thank them for all their parts as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we are going to get to, let's do a discussion and a vote on district chair, special education district chair. Neil, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, sir. All right, so tonight, I do want to discuss bringing on a district team chair for the Office of Student Support. Sort of want to do this in two ways, or two sections. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the responsibilities of my position, then talk to you about the responsibilities of the special ed coordinator position, and then talk about the demand and what is being, at this point, adversely impacted by the demand. So I'm just going to move to my other computer. So within my position, what I am responsible for, I'm getting a little feedback. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So the responsibilities within my position are direct oversight over the district-wide special education, Section 504, McKinney-Vento, which is homelessness, tutorial services, out-of-district placements, out-of-district transportation, teacher evaluation for the special education staff, special education contracted services, grant writing for the special education grants and maintenance, civil rights compliance, and Title IX. Where under the special education coordinator responsibilities, you have English learners, early intervention, chairing IEP meetings, which what falls under that are the initial meetings, the reevaluation meetings, the transition meetings, and the reconvene meetings. Scheduling of all of those meetings, special education compliance paperwork, and the evaluation of teachers. We have a lot of data and work demands that that show increase. And what has increased over the years is the increase of the students receiving IEPs, the students on 504 plans, the students receiving tutorial services, the requisition of transportation due to foster care and homelessness, and English language learners, and referrals for early intervention students. The biggest one has been the increase of students with social, emotional, and mental health needs. What this has resulted in is obviously the creation of the programs, which we have been blessed to have. But within that, with all of that increase, there are some things that at this point are being adversely impacted. Those things are the oversight and evaluation of the special education and the L programs, meaning the teachers, the programs, and the students. The collaboration with the educators regarding curriculum modification development from the special education or the L end of things. The ability to complete the Department of Education mandated reports. I have multiple reports that I have to complete on an annual basis. And the ability to complete teacher evaluation timelines as indicated by the Department of Education. So in order for the Office of Student Support to provide these services to kids with a structured plan. I am proposing a district-wide team chair position for the department. Courtney, at this point, would you just for the financial impact section, could you just speak to that? You're on mute, Courtney.
Thank you, Neely. I didn't want
Good
you to
job.
go on making pizza and pasta and stuff over here.
You're good.
Okay. So yes, I'd be happy to do that. Because this is a 100% special education position, certainly one of the funding sources is available to us, a circuit breaker. I would highly recommend that at this time because we certainly don't know what we're going to end up with, if the school committee so approves, I should say, rather than using general fund or anything like that. So that's what I would recommend. What I was projecting for the end of FY 2020 was $654,323. Obviously, if we hired somebody fairly shortly, or I don't know, Neely, if you're thinking as of July 1st, or were you thinking of posting immediately?
I would like to post immediately.
Okay. So, certainly we saw of 50,000. Now, if you divide that out by just the remaining, time throughout the year, we're talking about a very small amount in FY 20 and in FY 21. We'll just see how we incorporate that within the confines of the rest of what we're dealing with. So for this particular vote, for now, I would recommend the special ed circuit breaker revolving fund.
Thank you, Courtney.
Welcome.
All right, so do any of you have any questions about this?
Neely, I have a quick question. I know that we've been working with Mr. Reardon from the DTA, and as well as he's been working with the leadership of the DTA. They've been very supportive of this position, and they understand the demands. This position would remain, if it was to be someone hired from within, they would remain within the DTA contract. This would not be an administrative position, correct?
Correct.
So they would stay a member of the DTA and not lose their position if it's somebody internal were to get the position.
If it was somebody internal. Yep, but of course we'll do a full
Mr. Reardon
search.
today also?
Pardon me, Kev?
You had spoken with Mr. Reardon today, I believe?
I did speak with Kevin today, and they are 100% on board with this.
We will need to get formal approval from them
Absolutely.
and so forth.
And is our intention only to post this internally?
It does not have to be. We often do if we think we have a lot of good candidates internally, and I would say that Neely would correct me if I'm wrong. There's a number of very viable candidates internally. That's my thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where we start. And the reason being, when the liaisons come on, they are actually trained I train them as team chairs. It takes about 2 years. But the reason for that is it keeps us out of trouble, actually. If they're trained that way, then they have a very solid understanding of the law. And they understand that command of chairing a meeting and like that. So we do have a lot of viable candidates. I don't know who might be interested. It could be 6 of them. It could be none of them.
Okay.
But if we didn't find anybody, obviously we would certainly go outside.
Your intention would be to do virtual interviews, especially
Yes.
if they're internal?
Yep, and what I would do, like any other search, I would have a general education teacher, special education teacher. I'd grab one of the principals, have a related service provider. So we'd make sure that we had a full committee in order to do this.
Becky, you raised your hand. I've already unmuted you.
So Neely, I have a question in terms of hopefully if this position is approved and you're able to find somebody to fill the position immediately or very soon, is that going to be sufficiently helpful for your workload now? And what does it mean for this summer? Because I know that was a concern too.
Yeah, it's a 183-day position. I think this is another conversation for us definitely to have. Right now, the way the summer is looking, and I'm just speaking, this has nothing to do with the typical school year, right? No, nothing is typical anymore. Right now, either way, I think we're looking at more of a virtual model because that's what the state is starting to look at. But again, that's if we don't go back. Might we be talking about, some sort of stipend position or something like that to assist in the summer? I think this is something we need to talk about. I don't know if now is the time.
But there would be options, I guess,
Mhm.
if you needed, that we could explore.
Yeah, and I think if we can lock this up, I think this is going to be extremely helpful.
Okay.
But again, we definitely will have to revisit this summer.
So this is a novice follow-up question, just to clarify.
Sure.
Someone can be a teacher, a member of the DTA, and still work during the summer if they're paid a stipend? Okay. Okay, thank you.
My question, I know we had approved another position. I mean, a couple weeks ago, it's going back a few weeks. I think it was a long-term sub position, correct? I know we haven't been successful in holding that, but in that search, but are we taking that off the table now, or is this in addition to that?
I think we're going to take that off the table.
Okay.
At this time.
Just want to confirm that. Thank you.
And if I could jump in just real quickly, Mr. Ardle, is that the summer is such a new idea. I mean, we did not anticipate this. We never could have anticipated that this was going to happen. And my sense is that if we're doing this virtually, I don't know that one person is going to be able to handle it all. With Neely managing the extended school year, which is also going to have to be virtual. I don't know that one person is going to be, I think you're going to be needing to look at a couple of staff members to try to make that work in the summertime.
Yep.
Okay. I think that makes sense. Any questions, concerns from anyone? And if no, I'll be looking for a motion. Oh, did I hear?
I believe, Neely, that in your agenda item summary, you had put 180 days, but I believe you just said something about 183 days.
Yes, it should be 183.
So that requires a correction on that.
Yeah, so when you're doing the vote, just say 183, please.
Yep. So if anyone's so moved to make a motion, just make that adjustment, please. Does anyone have it in front of them? Because I do, so I will read it. We would move to approve the addition of a special education team chair, FTE 1.0, for the Office of Student Support Services. This position will be a school year position, 183 days.
Actually, that was the old one, Brett.
Oh, that was?
Yes, it was.
I sent an updated one, Brett.
Yeah. Okay. Just give me one second, please.
I have it in front of me.
Okay, go ahead.
Read it.
Go ahead, Neil. If you could just read it and they can so move, please.
I have it.
Okay.
Move to approve the addition of a 1.0 FTE special education team chair for the Office of Student Support Services, contingent upon successful agreement with the Douglas Teachers Association, DTA. This position will be a school year position, 183 days. Is that the right one?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So moved.
So I have a motion from Lisa,
Second.
second from Becky. Any other discussion on the matter? We'll do a roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Vicky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Poor Julie.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Motion passes.
I thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Two things real quickly, Brett. So I will write this up and send a document along to Mr. Reardon for their approval of the position of the team chair, because we presently do not have one.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, just while we're on the topic, it sounded like he was watching earlier, so I just want to thank Mr. Reardon for, his flexibility in working with us during these tough times here. I know we've had to bring a couple different matters to him, and I think that the teachers union has been very great in working with us. So I just want to acknowledge that.
And I would like to second that. They have been absolutely unbelievable, absolutely wonderful. So thank you to them.
Okay, it's not on our agenda, but relating back to our earlier discussion with Ms. Novick. So I guess first off, I'd be looking for a motion to proceed with working with MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, on our superintendent search.
So moved.
That was a motion from Becky.
Second.
I give that second to Kelly. Any other discussion on that matter? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Eterniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
That motion passes. So we are going to engage with MASC to conduct a superintendent search. I'm going to take these in pieces, so it's clear.
Sorry.
Cindy is down with Kelly. How'd that happen? I guess how do I want to phrase this motion? So I guess we're looking for a motion to conduct a full-time permanent superintendent search as opposed to an interim superintendent search. Thank you. With MASC.
So moved.
Motion from Lisa.
Second.
And second from Julie. Ooh, voice chiming in there. Any other discussion on that matter?
Sorry, Brett, who seconded that?
Julie.
Julie, thank you.
We'll do a roll call vote on that. Actually, any other discussion? I think I already asked that. Okay, roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Eterniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie, aye.
Okay, that was Julie Mulder. It didn't come through on my end. I'm not sure if anyone else did, but so then the last piece of this, I think, is do we want to have MASC do the I'm getting tired. The initial candidate search and to identify the finalists for us. What was that process called? The screening. Thank you. Do we want to have MASC do the screening? And I think we were in agreement that we wanted that to happen and for them to provide us with a list of finalists. So I'll be looking for a motion to have MASC do our initial screening and provide us with a list of finalists.
So moved.
I have a motion from Lisa. A second from Becky. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Sure.
Just having been on a superintendent search committee before, I think it's critical that we do supply what it is that we're looking for. We want to have somebody that fits our district and not like Massachusetts or, Boston, Massachusetts. Like we need to have a Douglas fit. So
I agree. So this last piece, let's finish this, but I want to come back to see if this is something we have to vote on as far as whether we're going to do the community survey, if that's just something we're going to, to do. But that's a good
But
point.
that has to do with what you're asking, because what they're essentially doing is taking all the resumes, which is what we would be doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like she's going to go through it. I actually would like it if we could actually look through those resumes too, maybe to see who they.
So it sounds like you guys would be able to participate in that screening, but have them be kind of the leads on the screening. Is that what you're looking for?
I don't know exactly. That's what I was trying to figure out. Is she saying that we're not going to have people in the community be involved? And it looks like Kevin wants to say something towards that.
No, I think what she was saying is that they were going to screen all of the initial resumes that are submitted for the position and get it down to a working number. So they would eliminate those who they feel do not think should come forward for interview. There's pros and cons to that. I mean, you might have a committee a group that might want to look at them. They can make their recommendation. But if they're going to do the screening, my understanding is they're going to bring, if there's 20 people that applied, and they may only bring 6 resumes forward to you, and 2 technically, you probably won't know who the other 14 were.
Yeah.
That's how they do the screening.
The other way I understood it as well is that, you know, they would still be taking our feedback as far as what we're looking for. They're not going to take a generic, you know, inside the 495 superintendent, criteria and use that. I think we want to do the best we can to refresh our previous superintendent search documents. I think we do go forward with the community survey and let that play through to our search requirements that we give to MASC. And then again, I think the proposal was that we let MASC that use those search requirements to do the screening and provide us with a list of finalists.
Do we have to vote on this? We have to have a, like, you know what I mean? Does it have to be voted on, or is this just the sort of thing that we can communicate with her? Like, if we need a little bit more clarity in terms of what that screening would look like, if we can. So my take was that she was saying typically a search committee would be, I mean, bigger. It wouldn't just be me and Julie. It would be administration.
Right.
Town people.
Yeah, I think it would be members of the administration, it'd be members of our teaching community, it might be members of the broader, you know, parent communities. To, you know, it'd be a bigger endeavor.
Yeah.
So
But the finalists could be that search committee that we formulate instead of having them be a part of the going through every single resume, because you'll literally sit in a room with a bunch of people and we're literally going to look through resume after resume after resume. They're taking that piece out. So when she brings back a finalist, then it's that, or finalist, like a group of them, then we can have that committee. It sounds like that's how it would work. Or
yeah.
that's what we should have happen.
I thought that the way that she was saying that they would just bring the finalists to the full committee if they were doing the full screening.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think what
Yeah.
Julie is saying, that they would bring us finalists, and then we could then involve other members of the broader community with our interviewing of the finalists.
Okay, so
Rather than have a broad group whittle down to the finalists, we would let MASC whittle down to the finalists, and we could use a broader group for the to interview the finalists. That's what we're proposing. Go ahead, Courtney.
Excuse me, Brad. You may want to clarify between the two, because remember, there is a big difference between that full out process that you pay around $10,000 for, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of different processes before you get to the end, and then what she was articulating within the membership dues process. So back to Becky's point, I don't know if you feel that you absolutely have to make that decision with regard to that. Sounds like you still have a little bit of things that you may want to clarify with her first.
Becky, Julia, I'll kind of defer to you.
So what I'm wondering, so I appreciate Julie's point that if we are given 6 finalists and we haven't looked at all of them, then we might be missing out on something that somebody might notice. I'm just wondering if legally, given the situation, if it would be possible for us to say, yeah, we want you to help with a lot of the screening, but if we can get myself, Julie, a couple of family members from the community, an administrator or 2, to say, we want to look through all of the applications also independently, but not in a meeting, so that we're not violating open meeting law. Like, I don't know what the legalities are of it. So
Yeah, definitely want to clarify that with her. I think it's an excellent point, because I have seen that happen a number of times. Although she's fabulous, don't get me wrong. Tracy does an excellent job, and I've known of her for years. But there is a lot to be said for that. I have seen that happen in past searches over many, many years, where you find out afterwards, you see them, and you wonder, geez, why didn't that come into the pile? Because you have different individuals looking at it from their own, I don't want to say mindset, but their own past experiences that they're bringing into that. Yep. And sometimes they weed out ones, and then you say, my goodness, why did we get this one out of 3 finalists? But yet this one over here appears to be much more qualified and more of what we were looking for. And that can happen. It's not that anybody does that on purpose or anything like that. It's just that I think you just have different people looking at things in different ways. So all I'm saying is it might be something you might want to clarify and look at it and then maybe decide after.
So I just want to, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just gonna say, is it possible that they could screen out the ones who maybe aren't qualified or, like the real outliers and narrow it down that way and then still have the committee go through all the applications?
So more of a semi-finalist.
Right.
situation. Okay.
I think that's a good idea. But
Yeah.
I think Becky and I think Courtney are on track. Normally, you would have a big group and they would all come in and they would all rate the reports and the resumes and so forth. But because we're going to be doing this for the most part virtually, it seems to me that a smaller group that is going to be able to get to the review with great deliberation, it would be better than not looking at. You don't know what's in that packet if they take 10, 15 people out of the mix, and now you've only got 6 or 7 to look at. Sometimes I think it's, I know that the administrators do this quite a bit, and they're pretty good at fine-tooth combing through resumes pretty quickly. And if Julie and Becky are involved, and if you can get a teacher to be involved, that's a pretty fair representation for a small group that could look through resumes. But I agree with Cindy. If there are people who clearly are not, first of all, certified, or just do not have the criteria that you're looking for, very limited experience and so forth, they can take them out, they can weed them out, and then give you a smaller batch to work at. But I think you want to look at, to Becky's point and Courtney's point.
So I just want to summarize what I heard from Tracy. It sounded like there was, there's the district directed effort where you would have your own search committee, kind of the broader community piece, and you would do your own screening, maybe with some guidance from MASC, and come up with your finalists. There was the MASC is going to do everything and just send us 6 names. I think she also mentioned MASC could do that and just have 1 or 2 of our search committee subcommittee work with them on that. But it sounds like we might be looking for a 4th possibility, which maybe is a not quite the whole full search thing, a smaller group to work with MASC on this, but still come down to a set of finalists, or we want to go to Cindy's option of kind of going to semi-finalists. If we're involved, are we okay with just having the few people involved whittled down to finalists? And I will say I am okay with that. But I'll also say I'm okay with letting MASC do it as well for expediency's sake. So.
Well, I mean, they could always tell us how many resumes they get. So let's say they get 20 resumes, and we could say, well, you know what, we'd like you to see if you can give us X amount of resumes. We could also do it that way. So like at the end, she doesn't give us 2 people.
Yeah, we
get
could
a decent
probably
number.
set the number of finalists that we want too. So, but I want us to be careful with that too, because.
Yeah, but I like Cindy's idea though. Get rid of like the people that they really, because they've been doing this for so long, they know what probably shouldn't be in that stack.
Okay. So we want them to do an initial weeding out. We won't call it a screening, but an initial weeding out, and then to have Becky and Julie put together a small search committee team locally to work with MASC on doing the screening to get down to the finalists. Am I hearing all that right?
If I could, Brett. So I think having district eyes on a number of candidates is valuable. Is people from the district looking at candidates is very valuable. I agree. There are people that you can certainly, Julie's point is well taken, that you can take out of the search. But then I think a small group getting their eyes on those applications and resumes and details and so forth, I think is really, really beneficial.
Okay.
In terms of if that's the direction that we go in terms of a small group to review resumes, I'm sorry, I'm tired too. I'm wondering about the mechanics of it. Like in my mind, I feel like it would be helpful to have at least 1 administrator, at least 1 teacher, and then possibly a non-school committee parent. Seems to kind of like cover the bases in terms of perspective, but I don't know. All the administrators are here, so.
But and Tracy may recommend, that's part of her job, is to tell us who she would recommend that we use. And I think that's probably what it would be anyway, but.
Yeah, so it sounds
guidance
like
in that.
maybe we don't need to, I don't know if we need to vote formally on this. Just as long as everyone's in agreement on the approach here, and we're gonna let Becky and Julie work with Tracy to come up with the approach, and we've all had our say on what the approach is. We'll let you guys go forward and work with Tracy to best determine what that approach is gonna be.
Okay.
We okay with that?
Yeah, I am. And I just want to say that when we spoke with Tracy the other day, it seemed like she was putting the idea of them sort of taking over the search process to help us expedite it, because I emphasize that too, that we want to expedite it. So I think that if we do have our hands in it and eyes in it helping them out, I only support that as long as we all are kind of wanting to move it along too. I don't want to do it to the detriment of the process and really slow.
Yeah, good point. I was gonna make the same point. I was like, yeah, let's go forward with that, but let's still do our best to try to expedite this if we can.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I don't think we need a formal vote or motion on that. So have I missed anything? I feel like I had one more part of this, maybe not. Okay, where are we in our agenda? School Business and Operation Managers Report. Ms. Keegan, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just one small item. As I articulated at our last meeting, and having the DESE teleconferences or Zoom meetings that we're getting so adept at, regarding the school bus transportation. So I did forward to Brett the other day. Now, these are just initial discussions with the two other school districts that have Telstone, and just put a couple of some ideas out there, but they've also kind of came up with some more things today to look at. But again, I just want to stress that we're at the beginning of this process. There's still more work to do, but, hopefully at some point, if the school committee is amenable to that, there are definitely some things to iron out. And again, it's a unprecedented, uncharted waters issue like everything else, but we are still working on that. And maybe within the next, I'm hoping, few weeks, we should have things ironed out for consideration. There are some complexities with it, with regard to municipal finance laws and versus, what we're being asked to do, and, the contract amendment aspect of it. So it would also have to be reviewed by legal counsel as well.
Okay, thank you. So more to come on that. But we are well underway and kind of getting that worked out, which is good. Thank you. Anything else tonight, Ms. Keegan?
No, I think that's it.
Do other topics not anticipated?
Yes, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm very curious as to whether or not Mr. Romano has a green screen behind him, and then secondly, what is he dining on?
No, that's the wonders of Zoom, right, Mr. Romano?
No, I actually am at Douglas High School right now. It's bright and sunny. There's a slight breeze blowing.
Oh, good. I'll go for a walk.
And I'm eating peanut butter explosion ice cream. The ice cream truck just stopped by.
Very nice.
So.
Very nice indeed.
Actually, I do have a question from something that came up, and it solely came up because my son managed to break his Chromebook. Led me to ask, what happens when a kid breaks their Chromebook? Because he did contact and was told to basically just use whatever we could come up with to continue to do his work. Is there a way that kids, now I've got 2 college kids at home, so we have a few laptops flying around the house that we can share. But is there a procedure for kids who end up with a dysfunctional Chromebook to get some way if they don't have another avenue at home?
Donna is still here, I think.
Yes, I'm here. Well, at this point, I mean, if they have a device they can use, I'm telling them to use it, yes.
Yep.
If we, as this goes on, get to the point where there's, significant people really not being able to do their work, excuse me, I guess maybe I could possibly have a thing where like a certain amount of days, every other week, once a month, I don't know, whatever seems reasonable based on what kind of breakage and issues we're dealing with, to have people come in so I can swap them out. Again, I guess I haven't had a plan for that. No.
Okay, I was just curious. Like I said, we've got a few things that he and his siblings can switch off on. My college kids don't tend to get up quite so early as the high school kids, so it's been working. But
Mrs. Grady, were you saying, was that a question that came from the community, or was that your own experience? I missed that
oh
one
no,
part.
that's my own kid.
Okay.
He managed to do that,
But
but it made me think. Okay, what happens? We have a lot of kids with devices. What happens if the device is broken?
And we had it at the middle school where a child broke their Chromebook, and the parents said, "What can you do to help replace this?" And they said, "For now, everything they're doing is hardware neutral. So if there's anything, they have an iPad, they have an iPhone, if there's a Mac, if there's a desktop, anything, they can still access their learning." And
right.
You take your kid's phone away, they still figure out a way how to talk to their friends online. So apply that same dynamic workaround for their learning, right? And until we have another plan. The great news is we were able to put so many devices into the hands of our children and make a very quick transition and switch, from the blessings of being able to provide a 21st century learning environment and have that capacity and utilize it immediately. What's our redundancy? Very little. We're Douglas.
Right.
We're everything we have is, saran wrap thin deep.
I totally understand, and I think it's great that he can access what he needs to access. It just brought the question to my mind, as we're only in the beginning of April. If we're doing this for a few more months, things being what they are, accidents happening. Is there a plan going forward? Was my question. So that's all.
I did start a list of the couple of kids who reached out to me with broken devices, and I'll forward that on to you tomorrow, so you can kind of. I think it's like 4, but that way you can kind of keep an idea of the scale that we're talking about.
Yes, I was just going to say, if you're watching at home, and you have a broken device from the school and you have no other means of accessing the schoolwork they need to access, to contact your building administrator.
Thank you.
I say, and some of the issue does become, like at the high school, we have some extra devices. At the middle school level, we do not. We literally have one per student and nothing else. I don't necessarily have something I can swap the middle school students with.
Yeah.
Not the students and schools the student technology.
But I'm also going to continue to wave the flag. My personal feeling, I don't want anyone going anywhere these days. People should stay in. I don't want anyone going into the school, and we'll do our best, but
yeah,
we got to have workarounds.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have no other way of accessing the materials, contact your building administrator. But
could we do everything possible until we have to have any kind of contact with each other? That so that's I would ask that. We're in a time of significant sacrifice.
Yeah.
Everyone, no one has what they want these days, right? You got to make do with what you have, and if we can limit any exposure that anyone has to anyone, that's and Brett Argo is the first person I ever heard say flatten the curve. That was 4 weeks ago, right? Wow. And it's now, I had never heard of it. I was like, "Ooh, that's brilliant," But now it's what we're talking about. Anytime anybody goes anywhere, they're out and about. They're exposed to whatever, and so whatever we can do during this time to limit anybody's exposure to anything. Their learning is first. No, their health and safety is first, right? Their learning is first in our mission, but right now everyone's health and safety is first. So
well said.
I'll shut up. I'm too tired.
No, thank you. All right, I think we did that justice. All right, I don't think we need executive session this evening. We kind of worked everything out. We need to work out an open session, which is good. Anyone disagree? If not, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn at 9:09 p.m.
So moved.
A motion from Becky,
Second.
second from Lisa. Any other discussion? Roll call vote. Brett Argel, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. We're all set, Pat.
Yay.
Good night, everybody.